Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Hello and welcome to Softcover, the print's new platform to launch books online during these times of the coronavirus pandemic. The launch today is in association with HarperCollins. We're launching a book titled Invertonomics. It's authored by Mr. Goonmeet Singh Chauhan. Welcome, sir.
I'm happy to be here with you.
Mr. Chauhan is a practicing architect and the founder of Design Forum International. You may have seen his work in many parts of Delhi. He's designed the Select City Walk in Saket. He's also designed the ITO footover bridge. He's also designing many upcoming government buildings. So, sir, we'll first unveil your book and then we'll have a conversation about the book, and your ideas of your 8 ideas to transform India. Congratulations, sir.
Really feels great. It's taken 8 years to reach this far.
Oh, okay. I want to begin by asking you that when you wrote this book, you talked a lot about things would probably, the way, nudge economics works, right? Nudging people to follow good behavior, either through fines or through some kind of a social incentive.
So I feel that all of us aspire for a country where things work. And it's very important that citizens are able to individually act towards collective good. But often there is a conflict. I mean, it's convenient to chuck litter on the road than to walk to the nearest bin and put it there. It's convenient to honk rather than wait a while. It's possibly, for whatever reasons, more convenient to snake drive than to lane drive. And therefore, what the book does is it provides for a shift in the ecosystem where a more inspired citizenship prevails, and government, through newer legislations and some tweaks in the ecosystem, is able to effect that. Money is a key driver for social change, so is technology. So essentially, the book suggests an ecosystem-based approach to solve problems in a manner that citizens would align to solving problems. And it creates a bhagidari sort of between the government, between a private enterprise, which is going to play a very pivotal role in implementing these changes, and the citizen. So that's the whole context within which solutions are being suggested in this book.
Can you tell us a bit about smart cards? Many of your solutions are based on the smart card concept that you have.
Yes. So you see, there are 8 ideas that, or rather 8 problems that are being addressed here. 5 of them are about city level problems. Some of them might not seem that big, but actually when they play out in your own life, they are big. So air pollution, for example, is a city level problem which we seek to solve using the smart card. Traffic compliance in terms of convenience, capacity, safety on the road is something that we wish to address through smart cards, and also honking. Apart from that, there are other ideas, city-level ideas like access to public toilets, how we can manage garbage segregation at source much better, and then some other ideas which are not related to smart card. I feel that today it's possible to individually measure social behavior. And the smart card solution, let's start with, let's say, honking, which is the first thing that the smart card would solve. Consider that every time you honk, you have to pay a rupee. What it would do is that it would make your honk behavior extremely appropriate and efficient. Currently, people honk out of rage. They could be habitually honking. They could be hurried and therefore they're honking, or they could be just nervous. So what we have proposed is that and the government has tried in the past, and civil society has tried in the past to run educational campaigns. Different countries over the years have attempted different solutions, but they don't work in a diverse sort of demography like ours. So what one is proposing is that you have a certain free set of allowable honks, but beyond that, each time you honk, you would have to pay 1 rupee. When you honk, let's say in a silent zone next to a hospital or a school, you would end up paying far more, or beyond a certain time period at night. And then the smart card would allow the charge to be actually posted on your mobile phone bill. So there's no human interface at all. It would also incentivize. So if you are somebody who says, well, I in any case don't honk unnecessarily, let's say you are the least honking person, or in the best 20%, then you would get incentives from, let's say, Shopper Stop or from a bookstore. However, if you are in the worst 20%, you would get even more severe penalties. Along with that, when you actually receive your statement at the end of the month, that would act in some way like a surrogate tutor. So you would know that you tend to honk more in the mornings, and you might actually get a comment saying, we find that you honk a lot more between 8:30 and 9:30. Maybe you're always running late. Would you like us to schedule a wake-up alarm for you? So it will be like a very friendly ecosystem where we measure social behavior. It's transparent to you, and therefore you are able to learn. And together, it will create a more efficient honking behavior and be able to empower citizens to behave better. And likewise, the same smart card would be used to solve air pollution. And currently, we find that while the laws exist that you need to get your car checked for air pollution every 3 months, the reality is that all we do is we go to a petrol pump, pay 10 rupees, and there is a little boy there who does some kind of a job and says, here's your certificate. It's not financially viable for a petrol pump owner to actually check within 10 rupees. So what we're proposing is that every quarter you would be levied a default charge. It's not a fine, it's a charge. Just like you pay for petrol, after all, you are releasing pollutants into the city's air. So in that sense, you are paying a charge which will be then used, the monies will be used to fight pollution, for 5,000 rupees default. However, if you should choose to go to a petrol pump or to a pollution checking center, you pay 500 rupees, and then he has enough money to actually check your car and spend enough time. So assume a city has, let's say, a city like Delhi has 20 million cars. Even if you assume 50 lakh operational cars going and getting themselves checked every quarter, then 50 lakhs times 500 into 4 times 2,000, you've given birth to a 2,000 crore industry. Now there's enough money in it for people to innovate and be able to advise you. And even people know that if they're not compliant, they're going to face a 5,000 rupee penalty or a charge, and therefore they'll be more willing to invest. So without any human intervention, because one thing that we need to understand in India is that many of us, and any system that relies on a discretionary government functionary trying to implement it is not going to work. It's humanly impossible, no matter how large a team we deploy, to check 50 lakh cards every quarter. So by using a smart card system, we've A, shifted the onus onto the citizen, and B, by linking significant money into it, we've actually been able to change social behavior in terms of how well we keep our car with regard to pollution. Similarly, lane driving, for example. Part of the reason we're not able to do lane driving in our cities is that the roads are not designed for lane driving. But part of the reason is also the way we're used to driving. But once those amendments are made on the road, let's say if you were driving slow in the fast lane, it can be quite annoying for others. You could be levied an automatic charge of 10 rupees per minute, and you also get an alarm saying that you already spent 500 rupees in the last 20 minutes. Or you could be snake driving, for which you could be levied a charge. And therefore, because this is known to you individually through your mobile phone, you would be able to auto-correct your own social behavior. And it's a scalable model, which means you can do it for 5 million, for 10 million, as many. And
Technology, sorry. So technology will step in where, probably the government authorities are not able to enforce a particular law.
yes, technology will step in, money is linked to it, and therefore citizens are positively incentivized or disincentivized. And then there is private enterprise. I mean, government is eventually going to effect it through some sort of licenses, which will be awarded to private agencies to effect these charges. And so even private enterprise has sufficient monies to be made. I mean, honking can earn roughly 60,000 crores. Even if the math is optimistic, even if the number is half of that, it's significant for an enterprise to run it. Air pollution, or rather the fight against air pollution, can effectively generate 20,000 to 90,000 crores. I mean, 90,000 in a non-compliant situation. And as people become more compliant, it would come to around 20,000 crores. So not only are we solving a problem, we've actually given birth to a live operational system which is beneficial for a private enterprise. And therefore, that system will continue to run. And even the government gets money. And more importantly, the compliant citizen also gets rewards. So, it's a win-win sort of situation for everyone.
You obviously think the private sector is better placed to bring in these kind of, new technology and to implement this, and actually not the government in terms of delivery of these services.
So I think the competitive environment needs to be created. And let's say you, in fact, give 3 licenses in every city. Let's say you would give 3 in Bombay. You can give 1 to a government agency and give 2 to private agencies, so that there is no monopolistic behavior. And let them compete. Let them reward the compliant citizen more. Because eventually we don't want it to be seen as an unpopular measure. What we want it to be seen is that if you are compliant, if you're not littering, then you are a great citizen, and therefore you do get better discounts. However, if you are somebody who is littering, then clearly you are fined. And we have pattern recognition technology-based cameras available now. Many cities are using it. And given that this is in the public space, privacy should not be that much of an issue, although that is also a question that would arise. But the benefits would far, far outweigh the points against it. And even subsequently, when you look at the chapter on safety, and when we're looking at safety in the public space, all this is going to hugely impact safety, especially automobile accidents account for 1.25 million deaths in India every year. And clearly a better traffic behavior is going to bring that down.
So the Motor Vehicles Amendment Act that India recently enacted. Do you think that the changes that have been proposed in terms of steeper fines will bring in some kind of a change in public behavior?
I think it's a great step forward. It's a great step forward because these changes were due almost for 20 years. However, in terms of the scalability of the implementing mechanism, I have my doubts. And therefore, the moment you bring in private enterprise into this, and it's not transparent. I mean, this has been effected almost, I think, more than a year now. This is last February. And I don't know of a single fine that has been levied on me or anybody around me. And if I were to imagine that all the time we are following all the rules, I think it would be naive. So I think maybe it needs to be sharpened, it needs to be more transparent, and we must use mobile phones to communicate with citizens. Politicians have learned this message, media companies have realized it, that it's the mobile phone which is really the mouthpiece of everything, any message that you wish to send out. And I feel it's high time that citizenship and whatever is the expected social behavior in the public space and transparency and messaging around it should be rooted through the phone. It's very personalized, it's not publishing it anywhere. And it would really affect, the only good thing that that act has done is that instead of the local cop stopping you physically and asking you, it's become a little more technology driven. So it's a step in the right direction. We need to hasten it using this new methodology.
And you obviously need a bit more changes, right, and to ensure that they are enforced.
You need you need to go beyond jumping a red light. We are in 2020, if you please. If we are going to still be talking about jumping red lights, and that is the only sort of fine we're going to levy, then I think we've sort of been left behind. Even if somebody is using a mobile phone while driving, pattern recognition today allows you to discern that. So imagine how many of us are culpable on that account and how many deaths occur because of that. So therefore, the use of pattern recognition cameras combined with the kinetic smart card system, which will also be able to detect if somebody is snake driving, if somebody is driving slow in the fast lane, fast in the slow lane, or even parking where you're not supposed to park. I find even within colonies, there is a T-junction and a cab just parks itself wrongly, creating a blind corner that leads to an accident. All these things cannot be caught using the existing methodology. However, the moment this is a 90,000 crore industry, the Reliances of the world, Airtels of the world, the Ideas of the world would jump forward and say, well, we would tailor the solution in this way and let it be a competitive environment wherein they'll be able to effect these changes very, very effectively. And these attempts have been successful. The example that I've given in the book of TCS really modernizing the passport delivery system, many of these have worked quite successfully.
So how do you think the government will be more open to these kind of measures, given the fact that it does have some kind of it's possible that there may be some kind of a resentment or backlash from the public for these kind of measures, because eventually it will mean more fines on people who are not following rules.
So I think we need a measured dose, and we could start with larger vehicles to begin with. In many cases, I find government vehicles are also highly culpable, especially when it comes to pollution. So we could start with commercial vehicles, and let's say all vehicles above 2000 cc, which is not really a vote bank. And also that would allow all kind of teething issues with the ecosystem to get ironed out. And then also reward the compliant citizen. I think the key message is to reward the compliant citizen. After all, the government has taken a very stringent step, let's say in the lockdown. And when people know that this is for their
Sorry.
When people know that this is for their own good, I don't think even a seemingly harsh measure goes against the government. It's when the communication is not proper that such things happen. If you look at odd even, it is extremely inconvenient, but because people in some way felt that this was going to positively help them, there was considerable support. If you take the politics out of it, And you can even take the efficacy of the measure out of it for a moment. Purely the debate on whether citizens respond to harsh measures positively, I think with the help of good communication, with the help of a reward for compliant citizenship, and it must be binary and simple. I think one of the things we suffer from in our country is obfuscation of laws. And they become so complex that we really don't know whether we're right or wrong, and it's easiest to just bribe somebody and get out. So, the system is binary, like odd even work because it is binary. Everybody understood, aaj jana hai, aaj nahi jana.
Any more such schemes that you can think of that actually worked in an Indian ecosystem?
So, if you look at in the public space, even this experiment with 20,000 liters of water, if your consumption is less or if your consumption is more, I think it has had a great impact on people being able to be more prudent with their consumption. So, everybody is able to appropriate their actions if one can measure. So it's extremely important to measure. So one of the fundamental things in the book is we're looking at measurement, transparency, and connectedness. So you measure honking, you measure your behavior towards pollution, towards traffic, and I think we must talk about safety and equity because those are also very important issues. You have personalized communication with the citizen about their performance relative to their peers in the same city. So you know that if you are the worst 20%, then others are clearly better than you. There's no debate, or if you're the best. And then there is a platform where all of this gets connected. So whether it is the private enterprise or the corporates who are giving you discounts or the government, all of them are acting in unison on a simple technology platform. So I think it would work quite well.
But also, as you said, you've also addressed it in many things that there will be privacy concerns surrounding this. Do you think there need to be like strong laws on how, this kind of a data that is like citizen data is stored and not shared?
Yes, clearly cyber experts would have to be drawn in to ensure that there is privacy in terms of the data not being used for any other purpose, and also how long that data is stored for, because there is really no need to store that data indefinitely. So the moment you say that the data can only be stored for 72 hours or 48 hours, except when there is something worth reporting, that in itself will take care of many issues with regard to privacy and data.
So you talked about a Pedestrian Corporation of India, you talked about a Toilet Corporation of India. Do you really need more bodies to implement these kind of, social good measures? Or,
I think the whole, let's look at the Pedestrian Commission of India. Now, out of the 1.2 million people who die every year because of motor accidents, 45% are pedestrians. So if you look at our cities, in terms of the walkability in our cities, it is abysmal. And there is no one agency which is responsible for it. So if you look at Google Maps, today it's possible to predict how much time it would take to go from point A to B in the city because there is a map of the roads. I don't know of any city in this country that has mapped its pedestrian fabric, that has mapped what is the density of pedestrians on a particular route. So we find incremental measures, like Delhi has come up with a norm that footpaths need to be at least 2 meters wide. I mean, anywhere in the world you would find people would rather walk 1, 2, 3, 4 kilometers than use an automobile. However, in India, even if a child has to catch a school bus, most likely you go to the school bus by car because it's not safe. You go to the park by car, you go to the bank by car, you walk to the nearby market by car. And therefore, the pedestrian space has been overtaken either by squatters or by cars. or by government agencies. So you have a transformer on the footpath, you have a tree on the footpath, you have an electric pole there. You see bus stops in Delhi are all on footpaths. And I feel there is simply no Mai-Baap of the pedestrian. So the Pedestrian Commission of India is going to be like an overarching body, a body of experts that would do advocacy for the pedestrian. More importantly, it would be a funding agency. Nobody likes regulators without money. But the moment you have a regulator that is also giving you money, then every municipality is going to listen to them. We'll bring in funding. There are enough and more funds that come into the country for city development. But I find, and oftentimes I sit in these meetings, that one officer is trying to relearn through his own experience how to create a proper footpath. There is no city level mapping of footpaths. There is no city level data available. The other thing, simple legislation, for example, if the Pedestrian Commission would say that if you are building a new footpath and a contractor is being paid for it, you have to make sure that a cart, let's say when you commission a railway track, there is a four-wheeled chassis that runs on it to know that yes, this railway track can actually be used. Imagine a cart like that, which is 2 meters wide and has a poop of 7 feet, 2.1 meters. If that cart can roll on that footpath, it means there is no tree in the middle. It means there's no electric pole, police jockey, transformer. It also means that there is no high steps, because very often you find the footpath is 2 or 3 feet higher than the road. So it would automatically ensure a certain level of regulation in the behavior of the bodies that actually construct these footpaths. You know, you'd be amazed. Just like a person is referred to as pedestrian, meaning he is lowly, even the contractors and the agencies that made pedestrian footpaths, it's considered the most meaningless public work to be done. And therefore, that institution is important. Likewise, for Toilet Corporation of India, we need an estimated 14 lakh crores to build public toilets to this country. Our military budget is 3.5 lakh crores. Our HRD budget is 1 lakh crore, which means it will take us 14 years if we were to put 1 lakh crore, which is not going to happen. So the Toilet Corporation of India essentially is going to build toilets with coffee shops, with other cafes and florists and all put in together in a manner that now it's profitable to actually build toilets. And therefore, again, the Toilet Corporation of India comes in as an expert body that is also bringing in funds. So imagine a Toilet Corporation of India would work with the various municipalities and say, we will bring you a chain of coffee shop which will invest in 1,000 toilet blocks. You need 1,000 crores. They would invest in it. However, you need to give us these spaces across the city. And therefore, their only focus is going to be this. If you look at how things have changed in the country, in 1989, a body called the Container Corporation of India was created in 1989. And that changed the way logistics is managed in the country. At some point, the Airport Authority of India was created. And it is an extremely efficient body. We work with them. They've got solid understanding of how to run and construct airports. You have the National Highway Authority of India, which has really revolutionized the way highways are made. We desperately need something like that for toilets. Otherwise, you'll see dysfunctional toilets being constructed. We've seen so much money being pumped into Swachh Bharat over the last 6 years. I don't know how many of those toilets we've used and whether they are usable, because they're just made and nobody bothers to maintain them. It's not a scientific effort.
What do you think should be done about it? Because, this government has invested a lot of money into Swachh Bharat.
So I feel that the Toilet Corporation of India is looking at toilets in the urban public space, whereas the impetus of Swachh Bharat was really to give toilets to families in the villages so that they could address open defecation. And they have attempted to make toilets in the city as well. But the attempt only has been to plant a prefabricated toilet. There is no thought into how it's going to be maintained, how many janitors would be required to maintain it, the electricity, the water, and it's not positively remunerative to anyone. So the Toilet Corporation of India is creating a business model around toilets where we say that the toilet sits right in the middle, it's flanked by a florist, an ice cream parlor, coffee shop sits on top of it. You charge money for using that toilet. So in terms of charging, it's pretty much like the Sulabh model, except these are clean and dry toilets as opposed to clean and wet toilets. And so now there is an agency that's going to profit from running these toilets, and the real estate is free. Because the real estate is free, we'll be able to place these toilets where you need them, in the markets, in the parking lots. Because Sulabh has been successful at railway stations and at bus stands, but it ends there. Many municipalities have attempted to give out toilets to ad agencies. In terms of the money needed to construct, that comes from the ad agencies. But once it's built, the ad agency is not in any way going to benefit from running the toilet, and therefore they're dysfunctional. So we want to create operational toilets which are profitable, and therefore they will run.
What do you make of the smart city initiative by the government? How do you think that it has addressed the basic problems that Indian cities face, or is it disjoint from reality?
I feel that any pioneering effort takes its own journey, and I think the smart city project has really impacted our understanding of how technology can play a role in revamping the city. The scale of it is still very small though. And typically a smart city is a 100-acre intervention with a budget of 200 crores or 300 crores. And a city like any city is a few 100,000 acres, and therefore 100 acres is really like a drop in the ocean. What it has done is it has brought in technology for managing sewerage, brought in technology for cleaning sewage in terms of sewage treatment plants, in terms of effluent treatment plants. One of the good things that has emerged through this initiative is street lights are now being monitored on a digital nervous system. So sitting in office, the chief engineer of operator of a area will know which streetlights are functional and which streetlights are not functional, when were they installed, what is the lifespan. So there is a learning that has happened in the last 6 years. However, unless we make these remunerative, unless it's profitable for somebody to build toilets, unless it's profitable for somebody to build smart cities, government has very, very limited resources, and therefore the impact is going to be very slow. What is it that we need in a developed country? We need streetlights to function and be available everywhere. Today, the coverage of streetlights in our cities is less than 20-25%. We are fortunate that we live in colonies where we have streetlights. Just go to a area which is what we typically call the unregulated habitats. They don't have streetlights. Because A, nobody pays for it, they don't pay municipal taxes. B, there is vandalism, which is where the civic cop comes in. The civic cop actually makes a street light a revenue generating light. And therefore, instead of being an expense for the government, the street light becomes an earning member for the government. So instead of government spending money on the street lights, now government will license the rights to install street lights because it comes fitted with a pattern recognition camera. So you can debate, do we want cities which will have 20-30% areas with streetlights, the fortunate ones, and 70% areas not covered with streetlights, and what it means for safety of elderly, for women and children? Or would we opt for a system that will allow for 100% coverage? Because now private enterprise is going to make money and be willing to invest in its creation as well as its maintenance. So I think smart cities has taught us that it's doable, but a lot more needs to be done, and only if it's remunerative will we see it happen in our lifetime. Otherwise, it's going to take 100 years.
But the measures that you have suggested, do you think that it can correct, the fact that most of our cities are unplanned?
Yes, you see, planning and interventions need to go hand in hand. Now imagine what the civic cop says is that the pattern recognition camera would levy fines only for 5 things. What is it that they want to levy fines for? For littering, for urinating and defecating in public, for vandalizing public property, for leching, if you please. So in a situation where the mandate given for imposing fines is so definitive, if you can suddenly have a system that is able to isolate any instance of littering and fine that person that very moment, somebody is just thrown a plate out of the car and that person is fined, gets his fine on his own mobile phone of 500 rupees, he's less likely to fine again. And even in unplanned colonies, vandalism is rampant. One of the reasons you can't put streetlights there is because they'll get vandalized. However, if they're all in a row, then you know who's vandalizing in real time. You also have a control room that is capable of seeing. And pattern recognition cameras on their own are capable of making it. So I think these are hard choices. The good thing is that only non-compliant citizens would be paying fines. Others will benefit that you now have a functional street light. And therefore, I think it's the most sensible thing to do.
So also, my last question, I want to talk to you about your idea of the Office of Bharat, right? Where you're talking about all services under one place for the people. Is that kind of an idea again, something that that is imaginable, given the fact that at the current there's an entire every service is spread across different places, and there's a lot of disjointness to that.
Yes, if you actually look at it, in 70 years, all that has happened in our villages is we are saying today that we've got all villages electrified, or all villages are connected by road. And otherwise, there is complete dysfunctional administration because buildings are just scattered here and there. Now, if you look at any large city, for instance, a large city is known, it's large because it has an airport. If you go one level lower than that, a city which has a railway station where many trains stop is considered a large city. You go one level lower than that and people say, okay, this train stops here and therefore it's considered a good city. Now, why was it so important? That it was important because people can come and go. It's like a hub. Similarly, in a city, to make the economy vibrant, city planners create business districts. Business districts is where all the commercial action happens. We don't have the equivalent of that in the village. So what the book is calling the Office of Bharat essentially is the rural business district, which will also be a transport hub, which will also be an education hub, which will also be an administrative hub, which will also be a health hub. We have 650 districts. What we are proposing is that you take 200 acres and you build, the first thing that you need to build there is the agricultural trading center. And make it possible for the farmer, when he brings his produce, you give him a free container. 46% of our agricultural produce gets wasted every year. And when a farmer actually brings his produce to the mandi, he has 72 hours to sell it. And because he's so desperate to sell, what we buy in the city for 100 rupees, he sells it for 10. And that is what kind of ensures that the farmers in this constant financial distress. So when he comes to this rural business district center that we're calling the Office of Bharat, he would get a container which will essentially give him the option of getting a free, rodent-free space to store his produce. It can be even a refrigerated container. And then we are going to upload it on a digital platform where he'll be able to trade his produce and actually get a fair price. Instead of getting 10 for 100, he might be able to get 30 or 40. And that money will go into his bank directly. So instead of getting money from a money lender at a very high interest, he will now have access to organized capital. And it's the same place which will also have schools for his children. It will also have a hospital. It will also have the district collector's office. Even if you look at the British days, every district had the DC office. And they would put a clock tower there. If you look at the Western country model, there is the downtown. The downtown has the sheriff. The downtown has the post office, the bank, and the bar. It is where all those activities congregate. And because they congregate, there is a certain synergy. That is completely lacking in our rural ecosystem right now. So imagine if that kind of an opportunity is made available to every district in our country, along with the containers being provided to them, the digital platform being provided to them. And very interestingly, the government has now made amendments to allow farmers to sell in other states. So the time is ripe really to implement that. And the investment that will go into Office of Bharat, let's say 200 to 400 crores gets spent times 650, we need 13,000 to 20,000 crores. No, sorry, not 13, the 1,30,000 to 2,60,000 crores. That money would again be retrieved because of rural real estate that you can develop around that Office of Bharat, because the land around that would also rise in value. So government can build maybe 2 in every state. And of course, the Office of Bharat Corporation would have to work with the states, because eventually, even if it's a central government scheme, some money could come from the center, some money would come from the states. And we create pilot projects in every state. And thereafter, again, bring in private enterprise to build these offices of Bharat. Or the government could build it as, in terms of do the overall site development, and then private enterprise could come in and build the mandi and such like.
So the government to begin with, and then probably the private sector stepping in for this kind of thing.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time and speaking about your book and your ideas. Thank you so much.
Really delighted to be here. Thank you for arranging this interaction.
And all the best for your book, sir.
Thanks a lot.